I was using my husband's laptop when a notification popped up. "You have a new match." I clicked it and froze. His profile said, "Widowed, looking for a fresh start." But I'm right here, very much alive. I quietly took a screenshot and called my lawyer. When he got home, I was sitting at the table with divorce papers and asked, "So when exactly did I die?" Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The chime was wrong. That was the first thing I noticed. It wasn't the standard polite ping of a work email or a calendar reminder. It was a bright three-note trill that sounded like a bird. I paused, my fingers hovering over the keyboard of Marcus's laptop. I was ordering new filters for the refrigerator water system, a task he'd asked me to handle because he was swamped with the quarterly reports. His computer was open on the kitchen island and mine was upstairs. It was simpler to use his. The sound came again, a cheerful digital ripple from the system tray. A small icon I didn't recognize pulsed there, a stylized interlocked diamond shape in a soft pink hue. No application name appeared when I hovered the cursor, just the icon. A prickle of something, not yet suspicion, more like mild, wifely curiosity, moved through me. What required a notification sound that jaunty on a machine used primarily for spreadsheets and client presentations? I clicked it. A window opened, clean and modern, a grid of photographs, women's faces, smiling, thoughtful, looking away from the camera, profile names like Sunny Disposition 23 and Bookish_Wanderer. My brain, slow to reconfigure, parsed the layout. It was familiar from television, from conversations with my single friend Simone, a dating app, on my husband's laptop. The air in our sunlit kitchen thickened. The hum of the refrigerator grew loud. My own reflection, faint and distorted, looked back at me from the dark monitor screen as I leaned closer. I was not logged into his account. The notification had simply opened the application to its main browsing screen. My hand felt detached as I moved the cursor to the top corner, to the profile icon. It clicked. My profile. His face appeared. It was his latest professional headshot, the one from the company website. He was wearing the blue tie I'd given him for his birthday, his smile confident, his eyes crinkling at the corners in the way I used to find charming. I scanned the text. Marcus 3739, never better, ready for new adventures. My eyes skipped down, the words blurring before snapping into terrible clarity. Relationship status, widowed. I stopped breathing. About me. It's been a tough couple of years rebuilding after losing my wife to a long illness. She was my best friend. I'm finally feeling ready to open my heart again, to find someone to share life's next chapter with. I value honesty, laughter, and deep conversation. Let's be real. The details poured over me like ice water. Height, 6 feet 1 inch. Occupation, regional sales director. Education, MBA, all true, all facts from the life we lived together. Then, interest in kids. Open to discussion. We had decided mutually, or so I believed, not to have children. Looking for a serious relationship, and the description of her or the late wife. A compassionate, quiet soul who loved art galleries and old jazz records. I stared at the sentence. I am an introvert. I prefer museums to loud parties. My vinyl collection of Miles Davis and John Coltrane occupies a dedicated shelf in our living room. He had taken fragments of me, my actual preferences, and repurposed them as relics of a dead woman, a ghost he had created. I felt a dizzying sense of displacement, as if I were the apparition looking in. The profile was active, online 2 hours ago. A green dot. He had been here, in this house, maybe in this very kitchen seat, browsing through women's profiles while I was in the next room planning a menu for his parents' upcoming visit. A cold, precise clarity cut through the initial shock. This was not a drunken mistake or a fleeting curiosity. This was a constructed narrative. He had written a biography in which I was deceased. He had set parameters for a new partner. He had, according to the app's algorithm, been actively looking. I did not scream. I did not cry. A strange stillness settled in my bones. It was the stillness of a trap being sprung, but I was not the prey caught in it. I was the one who had just discovered the snare. My movements became mechanical, deliberate. I used the screenshot function on the laptop, capturing the entire profile window. I saved the image to the desktop. I then right-clicked on the browser icon for the app in the dock and selected Copy Link. So I opened my personal email, which I was logged into on the side, and drafted a message to myself. I pasted the link and attached the screenshot. The subject line was simply, Reference. I sent it. Then I opened a new browser tab. I navigated to the website for a well-known high-end divorce law firm in the city center. I did not fill out a contact form. I just noted the name of the managing partner, a woman, Eleanor Daniels. I memorized the phone number. I closed the dating app window, I closed the browser, I finished ordering the water filters. The transaction went through. A confirmation email arrived. The ordinary world was still turning. I heard the garage door opener rumble. His car. He was home early. I shut the laptop, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the marble island. I stood up, smoothed the front of my trousers, and walked to the sink. I filled a glass with water. I drank it slowly, watching the reflection of the kitchen lights in the window, now dark with evening. The side door opened. "Ava, you in here?" Marcus's voice called, cheerful, normal. The sound of his keys hitting the ceramic bowl by the door, the rustle of his coat. "In the kitchen," I called back. My voice did not waver. It was my own voice. I set the glass down without a sound. I turned to face the doorway, arranging my features into what I hoped was a neutral expression. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound between us as he walked in, smiling, holding a bag from the upscale bakery I liked. A peace offering for nothing, or perhaps for everything. "Got you those lemon shortbread cookies," he said, placing the bag on the counter. He came over and kissed my cheek. His lips were warm. I did not flinch. "Thank you," I said. "How was your day?" "Brutal. Meetings back to back." He sighed, loosening his tie, the blue one. "Glad to be home." I nodded, looking at him, really looking. I saw the man I had shared a bed with for 12 years. I saw the slight tiredness around his eyes, the familiar cut of his jaw. And I also saw a stranger. A man who had drafted my obituary and posted it online for a date. The dissonance was absolute. The betrayal was not a hot, screaming thing. It was a vast, silent, empty space opening up inside my chest, a cavity where my understanding of my life had been. He chatted about a client, about traffic, about whether we should get the gutters cleaned. I responded in monosyllables, which was not unusual for me after a long day. He noticed nothing. My compliance, my quietness, had always been a convenience to him. It was the background texture of his life. He had no reason to suspect that the background had just sharpened into a blade, and that I was now, very calmly, testing its edge. He ate 2 of the cookies, complaining about carbs but enjoying them anyway. He talked about a potential promotion, a trip he might need to take to Chicago. I nodded in the right places. The performance was seamless. I felt like a technician operating a familiar, now obsolete machine. Every laugh line, every shared reference was a piece of data confirming the extent of the fraud. Our entire conversation was a script he had written for a different play, one where I was a memory, not a participant. When he went upstairs to change, I took the cordless phone from its cradle and walked out onto the back balcony. The evening air was cool. Our neighborhood was settling into its nightly rhythm. Sprinklers hissing on manicured lawns, a distant dog barking, the glow of television screens behind blinds. I dialed Simone's number from memory. She answered on the second ring. "Tell me you're calling because you finally want to try that overpriced fusion place," she said, her voice warm and immediate. "He has a dating profile." My voice was flat, a simple statement of fact. There was no other way to say it. The line was silent for 3 full seconds. What? On his laptop, I saw a notification. I opened it. I kept my eyes on the house across the street where a family was carrying groceries inside. His profile says he's widowed. The sound that came from the phone was a sharp, inhaled curse. Then, he did what? Ava, tell me you're joking. I am not joking. I have a screenshot. He described his late wife. He used my interests, my music. He said she was quiet, loved art galleries. Simone's fury was a live wire. That coward, that pathetic, spineless, rotten coward. I am going to drive over there right now and castrate him with a rusty spoon. Where is he? Upstairs. Changing. Her rage was so pure, so direct, it acted as a counterweight to my own chilling calm. It validated the reality of the offense. Have you said anything? Ava, you haven't confronted him, have you? Don't you dare give him a chance to lie and gaslight you. No, I haven't said anything. Good. Listen to me. Do not say a word. You need a lawyer today, yesterday. I could hear her pacing, the quick tap of her heels on a floor. This isn't just infidelity. This is premeditated narrative sabotage. He's not just cheating, he's erasing you. This is your golden ticket. A judge will eat him alive. I know. I looked up a firm, Daniels and Associates. The managing partner is a woman, Eleanor Daniels. Call her. First thing tomorrow. No, call her now. They have after-hours lines for emergencies. This is a 5-alarm fire emergency. I will. What are you feeling? She asked, her tone shifting from incendiary to protective. Are you okay? Don't tell me you're okay. You can't be. I considered the question. I felt the solid wood of the balcony railing under my palms. I felt the cool air on my face. I feel clear, I said finally. The confusion is gone. Now I just see the problem and the solution. That's my girl. That's the Ava who negotiated her salary up by 20%. Channel that. This is a negotiation now for your entire life back. She paused. Do you want me to come over? I can be there in 20 minutes. We can sit in my car and plan. Not tonight. He'll wonder. I need everything to appear normal until I have instructions from a lawyer. I can't risk him deleting things or moving money. You're already thinking like a general. I could hear the grim approval in her voice. Okay, but you call me the second you're off the phone with the lawyer. Every detail, promise me. I promise. We hung up. I stood outside for a while longer, watching the windows of the house across the street go dark one by one. The ordinary, predictable closure of a day. My own predictability had been a weapon used against me. It ended now. I went back inside, replaced the phone in its cradle, and climbed the stairs. Marcus was in his home office already on his desktop computer, his back to the door. For a wild, suspended moment, I wondered if he was back on the app, checking for matches. The profile picture of him in the blue tie flashed in my mind. I continued down the hall to our bedroom without stopping. The next morning, Marcus left for work at his usual time, 7:45. He kissed my forehead, said he had an early conference call. I waited until 9 a.m. exactly. Professional hours. I sat at the kitchen island on a stool, my notepad and pen ready. I dialed the number for Daniels and Associates. A receptionist answered with polished efficiency. I gave my name. I need to speak with Eleanor Daniels, please. It is regarding an urgent marital matter involving digital evidence of misrepresentation. There was a brief hold. Then a different voice came on, lower, calm, devoid of unnecessary warmth. This is Eleanor Daniels. How can I help you, Ms. Johnson? I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I spoke as if giving a project update. I discovered last evening that my husband has an active profile on a dating application. On that profile, he has listed his relationship status as widowed. The description of his deceased wife incorporates specific, identifiable details of my life and personality. I am alive. I have secured screenshot evidence and the profile link. I believe I require a divorce, and I would like to understand my options. There was a beat of silence on the other end. When she spoke again, her voice had changed subtly. It was sharper, focused, like a scalpel being lifted from a sterilized tray. I see. You have done exactly the right thing by documenting it. That is compelling evidence. Yeah, can you come to my office this afternoon, say 2 o'clock? I can. Bring the evidence. We will discuss strategy. Do not, under any circumstances, alert your husband to your discovery or this meeting. His knowledge would be disadvantageous at this stage. I understand. Good. I will see you at 2, Ms. Johnson will take it from here. The line went dead. I set the phone down. I looked at the neat square of sunlight on the polished floor. The decision was made. The machinery was in motion. I felt no triumph, only a sense of grim necessity. The first move was complete. I was no longer a wife grieving the death of her marriage. I was a client preparing for a litigation. The shift was absolute. The office of Daniels & Associates was on the 12th floor of a steel and glass building downtown. The lobby was silent except for the soft click of my heels on polished stone. I gave my name to the receptionist, who directed me to a waiting area of deep leather chairs and modern art. I sat, my back straight, a manila folder on my lap containing the printed screenshot and my notes. I did not touch the offered water. At exactly 2 o'clock, a young associate led me down a corridor to a corner office. Eleanor Daniels stood as I entered. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp gray eyes and dark hair swept into a precise twist. Her handshake was firm and brief. Her office was a study in ordered power, a wide mahogany desk, neat bookshelves, a view of the city skyline. There were no personal photographs. Please sit, Ms. Johnson. She gestured to a chair opposite her desk. She sat, steepling her fingers. You said on the phone you have evidence. May I see it? I opened the folder and slid the single sheet of paper across the desk. The color print of Marcus's profile faced her. I watched her eyes scan it. Her expression did not change, but a certain intensity settled in her gaze. She read every word, then she looked up at me. This is your husband. Yes, and you are the woman referenced here as deceased. I am. She leaned back slightly. This is, in 27 years of family law, a new one. It demonstrates a profound and calculated disrespect. More importantly, it is a clear, documentable instance of marital misconduct. It is not a private emotional affair. It is a public falsification with financial and social implications. It is excellent. The word excellent was delivered without warmth. It was a tactical assessment. I want a divorce, I said. I want the process to be efficient. I want a fair division of assets. But given this, I nodded toward the paper, I believe fair may have a new definition. It does. She opened a fresh legal pad. We will file on grounds of irreconcilable differences, but this will be the cornerstone of our settlement negotiations. His behavior is so egregiously outside societal norms that it gives us significant leverage. He will be motivated to settle quickly and favorably to avoid this being detailed in open court. Now, tell me about your financial landscape. For the next 45 minutes, I answered questions. My income as a freelance graphic designer, his salary and bonus structure, the mortgage on our home, investment accounts, retirement funds, the titles on the cars. I had brought statements for everything I could access independently. She took notes in a swift, clean shorthand. You have been methodical. Good, she said. Now, strategy. We will move quickly. I will have the initial filing prepared by the end of the week. We will serve him at home. I advise you to be present when he is served. It sets a tone of unshakable resolve. What should I say to him? As little as possible. You are not required to negotiate. You are only required to direct him to his attorney, which he will need to retain immediately. Your goal is to remain a fact, not an emotional opponent. The evidence, she tapped the screenshot, will do the arguing for you. She outlined the process, filing, temporary support orders, the discovery phase where all financials are disclosed, settlement conferences. With this in our pocket, she said, I anticipate we can secure a favorable settlement without a protracted trial. He will not want a judge to see this. The optics are catastrophic for him. What about the house? You have a strong claim to exclusive use during proceedings, given the nature of the misconduct. Do you want to stay there? I considered the sunlit kitchen, the home office, the bedroom. Temporarily, but I do not want it long term. It is contaminated. She nodded as if I'd stated a physical fact. We will push for him to buy out your equity or force a sale. We will also seek a disproportionate share of the marital assets. This isn't punitive. It is compensatory for the intentional infliction of emotional distress. A judge will understand the distinction. There is one more thing, I said. The profile is still active. He was online 2 hours before I found it. A thin, cold smile touched her lips. Even better. That shows continuing conduct. Do not alert him. Let him continue. If possible, document any further activity before he is served. But do not take unnecessary risks. Your safety and legal position are paramount. She stood, signaling the meeting's end. You have taken the correct steps, Ms. Johnson. This will be difficult. He will likely react with anger, then pleading. He may try to twist the narrative, to claim it was a joke or a fantasy. You must not engage. Refer him to me. Your power now lies in your silence and your evidence. I stood as well, gathering my folder. The printed profile went back into it. Thank you, Ms. Daniels. Eleanor, we will be working closely. I will email you a retainer agreement by 5 o'clock. Review it, sign it, and return it. Then we begin. I walked out of the cool, quiet office into the bright, noisy hallway. The elevator ride down felt like ascending from a deep, strategic trench back to the surface world. The blueprint was drawn. The objectives were clear: financial security, a clean break, and a legally sanctioned repudiation of his lie. I drove home, the folder on the passenger seat. The house was empty, just as I had left it. I went to the small desk in the corner of the living room, my personal space. I filed the folder behind a set of old tax documents. Then I opened my laptop and created a new, password-protected document. I titled it Plan. I began to list tasks, not emotions. 1. Sign retainer. 2. Gather last 3 years of bank statements. 3. Consult with realtor friend. Market value of home. 4. Research short-term rental apartments. The emotional shock had solidified into a crystalline structure of action. Grief was a luxury for which I had no time. There was only the next step, and the step after that. The law was my weapon, and Eleanor Daniels was my armorer. The quiet, art-loving ghost he had created was about to become the author of his considerable inconvenience. I saved the document, closed the laptop, and started dinner. The routine was a cover, a necessary camouflage until the moment I chose to reveal the new reality. The plan was set. All that remained was the execution. The chicken roasted, the potatoes browned. I set the table for 2. When Marcus came home, I was stirring a pan of green beans. The domestic scene was a perfect replica of 1,000 other evenings. He kissed my cheek, asked about my day. I told him a client had requested minor revisions to a logo. It was true. I did not mention the law office, the mahogany desk, the blueprint for dismantling our life. Mine was endless, he sighed, pouring himself a glass of wine without offering me one. Just back-to-back budget reviews. I'm brain dead. He took his usual seat at the head of the table. I brought the food over. We began to eat. This was the new routine, a performance of normalcy, conducted under a lens of clinical observation. I watched him, the way he scrolled through his phone with his left hand while eating with his right. A small, private smile touched his lips as he read something. I cut my chicken into precise pieces. I did not ask what was funny. "Anything interesting?" I finally said, my tone light, disinterested. He glanced up, the smile fading into a look of mild distraction. Oh, just a meme Derek sent. Work stuff." He locked the screen and set the phone face down on the table, a defensive gesture. He had never been careful with his phone before me. I nodded as if satisfied. The lie was so effortless for him. It made me re-evaluate 1,000 other moments, small absences, late nights at the office that were never questioned. Had they all been memes from Derek? After dinner, he went to his home office to catch up on emails. I cleaned the kitchen with deliberate slowness. Then I took my own laptop and sat in the living room, across the hall from his open door. I could hear the soft tap of his keys. I opened a blank design file, a legitimate project, and let my fingers move on the tablet. But my attention was fixed on the sound from the other room. Around 9:30, the 3-note chime sounded. It was muffled by the distance and his closed laptop lid, but I recognized its cadence, the dating app notification. My stylus paused above the screen. I heard the rapid click of his mouse, then silence. He had opened it. He was at this moment perhaps 10 yards away, browsing profiles while his wife sat in the next room. A cold, clean detachment settled over me. The emotional injury was now a data point. Continuing conduct. As Eleanor had said, I noted the time in my mind. I needed more than the initial screenshot. I needed a pattern. Over the next several days, I became an archivist of my own erasure. I carried my phone with me at all times. When he was in the shower, I would walk past his desk. If his personal laptop was open and unattended, I would not touch it, but I would look. On Wednesday morning, I saw the telltale pink diamond icon in his dock. It was still there. I began to note his patterns. He usually checked the app in the evenings, between 9 and 10, after he'd ostensibly finished work. He took his phone with him to the garage when he took out the trash. He had started taking longer showers. These were all opportunities for him to engage with his fictional future. I spoke to Simone only from my car or during my daily walk. He's still active, I told her, my voice low as I paced the park trail. The idiot, she hissed. Good. Let him dig his grave deeper. Are you safe? He's not suspicious? He is oblivious. My compliance is the wallpaper. He doesn't see the wallpaper. Just be ready. The papers are coming soon. He's going to explode. At home, I studied him like a specimen. I saw the slight distance in his eyes when he talked to me, as if he were already rehearsing conversations with someone else. I noticed he had bought a new cologne. He was more attentive to his gym routine. These were not signs for me. They were preparations for an audience that believed him to be a grieving widower. The hardest moments were the incidental touches. His hand on my lower back as he passed me in the kitchen. The way he would sometimes squeeze my shoulder while reading something on his phone. They were habitual, empty gestures. They no longer conveyed affection. They were the muscle memory of a lie. I learned not to stiffen, to accept them as one accepts a dentist's touch, clinical, impersonal, and temporary. One night we watched a movie, a romantic comedy he had chosen. He laughed at the jokes. I sat beside him on the sofa, a blanket over my legs. On screen, a man made a grand gesture to win back the woman he had wronged. Marcus shook his head, chuckling. So unrealistic. Who does that? I said nothing. I watched the flickering light play over his familiar profile. He was critiquing fictional dishonesty while living a profound, real one. The irony was so vast it felt like a physical pressure in the room. I existed in a state of profound duality. Outwardly, I was Ava Johnson, wife, homemaker, quiet companion. Inwardly, I was a project manager executing a critical, phase-gated plan. I signed and returned Eleanor's retainer agreement. I compiled financial documents in a locked file box in the trunk of my car. I had a preliminary, confidential video call with a realtor Simone recommended. I began to look at listings for apartments, not with longing, but with the practical eye of a strategist assessing a new base of operations. The house, our home, had become a stage set. Every piece of furniture, every art print on the wall was now a prop. I felt no ownership, only a sense of curatorial responsibility for the illusion. I was a ghost, but not the one he had written about. I was a spectral administrator, moving silently through the halls, cataloging assets, noting vulnerabilities, waiting for the designated hour to make my presence known. The blueprint was not just on paper, it was etched into my every breath. Business as usual was the most demanding role I had ever played, and I played it perfectly. He worked late the following Thursday, or claimed to. I received a text at 6:15 p.m., stuck at the office. Don't wait on dinner. I ate a salad alone at the kitchen island. The silence was a blanket. At 7:30, Eleanor's office called. The documents were ready. A process server would be at our home tomorrow, Friday, between 5 and 6 p.m. I confirmed I would be present. I washed my single plate and fork. I slept in the guest room that night, telling him I had a migraine coming on and didn't want to disturb him. He accepted this with a distracted nod, already looking at his phone. It was the first night in 12 years we did not share a bed. He did not comment on it in the morning. Friday passed with an excruciating slowness. I completed a client design, attended a virtual team check-in, and paid household bills. I packed a small suitcase with essential items, toiletries, a change of clothes, my laptop, important documents from the file box in my car, and placed it in the trunk of my car. I was prepared to leave the house that night if necessary. At 4 o'clock, I changed into simple black trousers and a cream-colored sweater. I wanted to look calm, composed, and unassailable. At 5:20, I set the scene. I placed 2 copies of the divorce petition, prepared by Eleanor's firm, in a plain white legal envelope. I laid the envelope squarely in the center of the kitchen table. I made a pot of tea, not because I wanted any, but because the ritual of it grounded me. I sat at the table, my back to the window, facing the doorway to the garage. I waited. The garage door opener rumbled at 5:48. I poured a cup of tea. The side door opened and closed. His footsteps came down the hall, briefcase thumping against the wall as he always did. "Ava, I'm home," he called, his voice carrying the false cheer of a man who believes his secrets are safe. "In the kitchen," I said, my tone even. He walked in, loosening his tie. He saw me at the table, saw the envelope. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then widened. "What's this? Early birthday present?" He dropped his briefcase by the table and reached for the envelope. "It's for you," I said. He picked it up, his name typed clearly on the front. He slid the papers out. I watched his face as he read the first line. "In re the marriage of Ava Johnson and Marcus Johnson. Petition for dissolution of marriage." His skin, usually a warm tan, turned a sickly pale. His eyes darted down the page, taking in the date, the case number, the name of my attorney. He looked up at me, his mouth slightly open. "What is this?" he asked, his voice hollow. It was not a real question. He understood perfectly. I took a small sip of my tea. The cup did not rattle in the saucer. I looked directly at him, my gaze steady. "So," I said, my voice clear and measured in the quiet kitchen, "when exactly did I die?" His face underwent a series of rapid transformations. Confusion, then dawning horror, then a desperate attempt at bluster. The papers trembled in his hand. "Ava, what are you talking about? This is insane. Why would you file for divorce?" "Read your dating profile, Marcus. The one that says you're widowed. The one that describes your late wife's love of art galleries and jazz. It's very moving." All the blood drained from his face. His grip on the papers tightened, crumpling the edges. "You went through my computer." The accusation was automatic, a feeble first line of defense. A notification popped up. "You should choose a more discreet alert sound." I set my cup down. "The question stands. I would like a date, a time of death. For my records." It wasn't like that," he stammered, his eyes wild, looking from the papers to me and back. "It was just, it's a thing some guys do. It's easier. Women are more sympathetic. It doesn't mean anything." "Easier than what? Than stating you are married and seeking to cheat? Or easier than stating you are separated and seeking a divorce? Which truth was too inconvenient for you?" He took a step back, hitting the edge of the counter. It was a fantasy. A stupid, harmless fantasy. I would never actually meet anyone. Your profile was active. You were online 2 hours before I found it. You have been online repeatedly since. I recited the facts without inflection. That is not fantasy. That is operational planning. He stared at me as if seeing a stranger. The Ava he knew, quiet, accommodating, predictable, was not capable of this cold dissection. He had written my character as a gentle ghost, and in doing so had failed to see the living woman's capacity for concrete action. You've been spying on me? I have been observing your continuing marital misconduct, yes. My attorney has a detailed timeline. It will be useful in court. The word court seemed to jolt him. Attorney, you got a lawyer without even talking to me. His voice rose, shifting from panic to indignant anger. How could you be so underhanded? A faint, cold smile touched my lips. It was the first real emotion I had shown. Underhanded. Interesting word choice. Now, you will need to retain your own counsel. All communication regarding the dissolution of our marriage will go through my attorney, Eleanor Daniels. Her contact information is on the first page. You have been served. I stood up, pushing my chair neatly under the table. I picked up my teacup and saucer and carried them to the sink. I rinsed them, placed them in the dishwasher. Every movement was deliberate, calm, a demonstration of utter control. He stood frozen, the damning papers hanging from his hand, watching me perform these mundane tasks. The normalcy of it was more terrifying to him than any screaming fit would have been. Ava, wait, please, we can talk about this. We can fix this. I turned, drying my hands on a towel. I looked at him, the man who had killed me off for convenience. There is nothing to fix, I said. The marriage you are leaving is the one where your wife is dead. I am opting out of that narrative. You will deal with the living one and her lawyer from now on. I walked past him, out of the kitchen and down the hall. I picked up my purse and car keys from the console table. I did not look back. I opened the front door and stepped out into the cool evening air. I did not slam the door. I closed it softly with a definitive click. The confrontation was over. The first move in the legal war was complete. He was now in possession of the facts. His world had just been legally and irrevocably served. I did not go far. I drove to a quiet coffee shop 2 miles away, ordered a black tea, and sat at a corner table. My phone, face down on the wooden surface, began to vibrate. I watched it skitter slightly with each call. He called 6 times in 20 minutes. Then the texts began. Ava, please pick up. We need to talk. This is a huge misunderstanding. You're throwing away 12 years over a stupid profile? Answer your phone. The messages were a roadmap of his panic, denial, minimization, guilt-tripping. I took a sip of tea. I did not respond. At 8 p.m., I drove to Simone's apartment. She had already ordered Thai food and opened a bottle of wine. For you, not for me, she said, pushing a glass of water toward me. You need a clear head. I updated her. She listened, her expression grimly satisfied. He'll try to see you, she predicted. He'll show up here or at the house. He'll want to look you in the eye and try to manipulate you. I know. Do you want to see him? It's inevitable. Better to control the time and place. I texted him a single line. Do not come to Simone's. I will be at the house tomorrow at 10 a.m. to collect some things. We can speak then. His reply was immediate. I'll be there. The next morning, I returned to the house. I brought 2 empty cardboard boxes. He was waiting in the living room, still in the same clothes from the day before. He looked exhausted, his hair unkempt. The legal papers were now spread across the coffee table. The performance of distress had begun. Ava, he said, his voice raw, thank you for coming. I did not sit. I remained standing near the doorway, boxes at my feet. I have 15 minutes. He flinched. 15 minutes? For our marriage? Our marriage ended when you wrote my obituary. This is a logistical discussion. Have you retained an attorney?" He ignored the question. He stood, pacing a short path. "I deleted it. The profile. It's gone. I was an idiot. It was a moment of weakness. I've been stressed about work, about us. I felt invisible. It was a stupid way to get some validation." I listened. He was offering the classic trifecta: external blame, work stress, shared blame, about us, and pathos, feeling invisible. He had crafted this narrative overnight. "You felt invisible," I repeated, my tone flat. "So your solution was to make me legally dead. That is a unique approach to marriage counseling." "It wasn't like that," he snapped, the carefully constructed vulnerability cracking to reveal frustration. "You're twisting it. You invaded my privacy. You hired a lawyer behind my back, and now you're acting like I'm a monster over a stupid online joke." The anger phase. Right on schedule. "A joke," I said. "You presented yourself as a widower to solicit romantic connections from other women. What is the punchline, Marcus? Is it the part where your living wife finds out?" "It wasn't real. None of it was real. I never met anyone. I never would have." He ran a hand through his hair. "You're blowing this so out of proportion. People have affairs, real physical affairs. This was nothing." Minimization. Comparing his transgression to a supposedly worse one to make his seem acceptable. "This was not an affair," I corrected. "An affair acknowledges the existence of a spouse. This was erasure. It is a different category of betrayal, and your assessment that it is nothing only confirms why this is necessary." He stared at me, his eyes pleading now. The anger hadn't worked, so he reverted to pleading. "Ava, please, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. It was a terrible, cowardly thing to do. Can't we just go to therapy? Fix this? I'll do anything." The apology. But it was an apology for the action, not an understanding of the injury. It was a tool to achieve a goal, getting me to call off the legal process. "Therapy cannot fix a fundamental lack of respect," I said. "You did not make a mistake. You made a series of conscious choices to create the profile, to write the lie, to maintain it, to engage with it. That is your character. I am simply acknowledging it." His face hardened. The plea hadn't worked either. He shifted again. "So that's it? You're just going to take half of everything I've built? You're going to drag my name through the mud? For what? A profile?" "The financial settlement will be determined by the law and the evidence, which includes your fraudulent representation. As for your name, you are the one who dragged it through the mud. I am merely refusing to clean it up." He was silent for a long moment, cycling through the depleted options. He had no more moves. "You're cold," he said finally, his voice low with resentment. "I never knew you could be this cold." "You never knew me at all," I replied. "You knew a convenient fiction. Now you are dealing with the fact." I picked up my boxes. "I will be back next Tuesday with a mover for my office equipment and personal items. I expect you to make yourself absent. If you are here, I will have a court officer present. Direct all further communication to Eleanor Daniels." I walked to the bookshelf and began removing my design annuals and art books, placing them neatly in a box. He watched me, a spectator to the dismantling of his life. He did not offer to help. He did not speak again. The argument was over. He had shown me every face of his blame, and I had found each one lacking. There was no core of remorse, only a fear of consequence. When the box was full, I lifted it. I walked past him, out of the living room, through the hall, and out the front door. The silence behind me was total. I had not raised my voice. I had not cried. I had simply stated the new reality and begun, literally, to pack it up. His blame game had ended in a checkmate he still didn't fully comprehend. The only sound was the solid click of the door closing, once again on the past. I met with Eleanor Daniels the following Monday. We were no longer in her grand corner office, but in a smaller, more functional conference room. Files were stacked neatly on the table. We were in the operational phase. "He has retained counsel," Eleanor informed me. "A David Miller from Hart and Browning, defensive, mid-tier. They will likely push for mediation immediately, hoping to contain the damage and minimize financial exposure." She steepled her fingers. "But before we enter negotiations, there is a strategic move to consider, one that shifts the power dynamic permanently." I waited. "Your husband's lie exists in a digital space, but its impact is currently contained to the two of you and our offices. He is likely crafting a narrative for his family, his friends. Perhaps that you grew apart, that you became cold, that you are being unreasonable. He will paint himself as the reasonable party blindsided by a litigious wife." I nodded. This was predictable. "We can preempt that," she continued. "We can control the narrative. I am advising a controlled, factual, public statement from you on your social media accounts where you are connected to mutual friends, his family, colleagues." "A post," I said. "A simple, polite, devastating post. You state the truth, that you are alive and well, and that sadly your marriage has ended. You express disappointment that Marcus chose to represent himself as a widower during the marriage. You tag him. You tag his immediate family. You do not attack. You merely state facts. The court of public opinion will do the rest." I considered it. The idea sent a cold thrill through me, followed by a spike of anxiety. It was one thing to pursue legal justice in private documents. It was another to lay bare the humiliation on a public platform. "It feels aggressive," I said. "It is defensive," she corrected. "It is claiming your truth before he can disseminate his falsehood. It protects you from being cast as the villain. More importantly, it applies social pressure that will make him far more amenable to a swift and favorable settlement. He will want this to go away." She was right. The legal battle was one front. The social battle was another. I had to win both. What should it say? Short, unemotional, factual. Let me see a draft. I took out my phone and opened a notes app. I typed, deleted, typed again. After a few minutes, I showed her the screen. "To our friends and family. I am writing to share some personal news. After much reflection, Marcus and I have decided to end our marriage. This is a sad and private matter, and I had hoped to handle it with discretion. However, I feel it necessary to clarify one point, as I understand there may be confusion. I am, as of this posting, very much alive and in good health. I was disheartened to learn that during our marriage, Marcus maintained an online dating profile in which he presented himself as a widower. I wish him well in his future, and I ask for privacy as I navigate this difficult time." Ava Johnson. Eleanor read it, her lips a thin line. Perfect. The politeness is the knife. Post it today. Tag him. Tag his mother, his sister, then log out of all your devices for 24 hours. Do not read the comments. Do not engage. Your work will be done. I drove to a public park, found an empty bench under a large oak tree. The sun was high. I opened the social media app on my phone. My hands were steady. I copied the text from my notes. I tagged Marcus Johnson. I found his mother's profile, his sister's. I tagged them. I took a breath, my finger hovering over the post button. This was the point of no return in the social sphere. Once done, the story would belong to everyone. I pressed it. A confirmation message appeared. "Your post is now live." I immediately closed the app. I logged out of the account on my phone. As Eleanor instructed, I did not wait for the reaction. I stood up and began to walk the perimeter of the park, a slow, measured circuit. My phone, now just a phone, began to vibrate in my pocket. Notifications from other platforms, from text messages, from calls. I silenced it. I kept walking. After 30 minutes, curiosity and a need for solidarity overrode the directive. I called Simone. Her voice was a burst of shocked laughter. "Oh my God, Ava, it's everywhere. It's perfect. The comments. His mother commented a crying emoji and then deleted it. His sister posted, "WTF Marcus?" People are sharing it. You've started a fire. Is it a disaster? I asked, my voice calm. For him? Absolutely, for you. People are calling you a queen. They're saying how strong you are. They're tearing him apart. The narrative is set. He's the pathetic liar. You're the wronged, classy woman. It's a masterstroke. I finished my walk and returned to my car. I drove to the temporary extended stay hotel where I was living, a bland but clean room that was now my headquarters. I allowed myself to open my laptop, but only to access my work email. The social media tab remained closed. My personal email, however, was flooding. Condolences, messages of support, outrage on my behalf, a few awkward notes from mutual friends saying they didn't know what to say, and one email from an address I didn't recognize with the subject line, "I matched with him." My heart stalled. I opened it. It was from a woman. "I saw your post. I matched with Marcus J37 3 weeks ago. We exchanged a few messages. He told me his wife died of cancer 2 years ago. I am so sorry. I had no idea. If you need any verification from me, I am happy to provide it. What he did is monstrous." I stared at the screen. Corroboration. Third-party verification of the lie. This was beyond a screenshot. This was a witness. I forwarded the email to Eleanor immediately with a single line, "Further evidence." I then wrote a brief, polite reply to the woman, thanking her for her courage and telling her my attorney might be in touch. I did not ask for details. I did not need to know what they discussed. The fact of the communication was enough. That evening, as I ate a solitary meal from the hotel's kitchenette, my phone rang. It was Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. He did not leave a message. The silent, repeated calls were his response. Panic. Helpless, furious panic. The walls of his respectable life were trembling. The midpoint was reached. I had gone public. The power had irreversibly shifted. I felt a strange emptiness followed by a solid, granite-like certainty. The truth was now a public fact. My reclamation was no longer a private mission. It was a published decree. The calls stopped after midnight. The silence that followed was more telling than the noise. He had either given up or was consulting with his attorney on damage control. I slept, a deep and untroubled sleep for the first time in weeks. The deed was done. The truth was loose. The next morning, I logged into my social media from my laptop, bracing for a torrent. There were hundreds of notifications. I did not read them individually. I scanned the pattern. Overwhelming support for me. Expressions of shock and disgust directed at him. A few of his college friends had posted defensive comments that were quickly buried. His sister had posted a follow-up. "Family, please respect our privacy during this time." She had not defended him. That was significant. My email contained a message from Eleanor, sent at 7 a.m. The post has had the desired effect. His counsel has contacted me, requesting an urgent settlement conference. They are motivated. We will meet tomorrow at 10 at my office. I replied with one word, "Understood." Simone called while I was drinking coffee, so his HR department called him. "How do you know that?" "Lindsay in accounting. She said her boss was pulled into a meeting with legal first thing. They're concerned about reputational risk, given his client-facing role. He's not fired, but he's on very thin ice. The widowed story isn't a good look for the company brand." I absorbed this, a professional consequence. It was both satisfying and unsettling. The lie had tentacles that reached further than I had imagined. "Also," Simone continued, "your mother-in-law called my mother." What did she say? She was crying. She said Marcus told her you had a nervous breakdown and were making up stories. The post proved that was a lie. She feels betrayed by him, but she's also embarrassed. She asked my mother to tell you she's sorry. I felt a pang, not for Marcus, but for the older woman who had been fed a false narrative about me. The collateral damage was spreading. Thank you for telling me. That afternoon, I returned to the house with a hired mover and a court officer, as promised. Marcus was not there. The officer waited in his vehicle while the mover and I entered. The house felt different, tense and hollow, like a museum after hours. In the kitchen, I saw a half-empty bottle of expensive bourbon on the counter, not put away. A single dirty glass sat in the sink. I went to my former office. The mover began disconnecting my computer, wrapping my monitor. I packed the remaining books and personal files from the desk drawers. In the bottom drawer, under a stack of old sketches, I found a small gift box. It was from a jeweler, a place we never shopped. Inside was a woman's silver bracelet, delicate and modern. It was not my style. There was no receipt. I placed it back in the drawer and left it. It was evidence, but not the kind I needed. Its mere existence was footnote enough. As we were loading the last boxes into the moving van, a car pulled into the driveway. It was Marcus. He got out slowly. He looked terrible. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes shadowed. He had not shaved. He stood by his car, watching us, not approaching. The court officer stepped out of his vehicle, a silent, official presence. Marcus's gaze met mine across the driveway. There was no anger left in his face, only a drained, sullen defeat. He looked like a man whose secrets had been aired on the evening news. I gave him a brief, impersonal nod, then turned to the mover. That's the last of it. Thank you. I got into my car and drove away. I saw him in my rearview mirror, still standing there, a solitary figure in the driveway of the crumbling facade. The settlement conference the next day was held in a neutral meeting room at Eleanor's building. Marcus was there with his attorney, David Miller, a man with a tired, conciliatory demeanor. Marcus would not look at me. He stared at the polished table, his jaw tight. Eleanor led the discussion. Given the unique circumstances and the documented evidence of marital misconduct, my client is entitled to a disproportionate share of the marital estate. We are proposing a 65-35 split in her favor. This includes the full buyout of her equity in the home, the transfer of her retirement account without penalty, and temporary spousal support for 24 months to facilitate her transition. Miller cleared his throat. That is highly aggressive. My client acknowledges poor judgment, but this is not a case of dissipation of assets or physical harm. We were thinking closer to a 55-45 split with a standard support duration of 12 months. Eleanor did not smile. She opened a folder and slid a single sheet across the table. It was the email from the woman who had matched with him, printed out. This is a statement from a third party verifying the widowed narrative was used in active solicitation. We have others who have come forward since the social media post. This moves it from poor judgment to deliberate, ongoing fraud with emotional distress. If we cannot reach an agreement today, we will proceed to discovery and depose these individuals. The narrative in open court will be vivid. Marcus finally looked up, his eyes wide with fresh horror. He had not known about the email. The walls were not just closing in. They were now lined with witnesses. Miller glanced at his client's face, then back at the paper. He let out a slow breath. We need a moment to confer. Eleanor and I left the room. We stood in the hallway. They will settle, she said quietly. He cannot risk a trial. His professional life is already precarious. A public airing of testimony from women he lied to would finish it. 15 minutes later, we reconvened. Miller spoke. We can agree to the 65-35 asset split. On the spousal support, we propose 18 months as a compromise. Eleanor looked at me. I gave a slight nod. It was more than fair. It was victory. Agreed, Eleanor said. We will draft the settlement agreement by end of week. The meeting ended. As we all stood, Marcus finally spoke, his voice low and rough, directed at me. Was it worth it? Destroying me? I looked at him, the man who had tried to delete me with a few keystrokes. I didn't destroy you, I said, my voice calm and clear in the quiet room. I simply refused to disappear. You handled the rest yourself." I walked out with Eleanor, leaving him with the ruins of his own construction. The legal walls had closed in, locking him into a consequence of his own design. The social walls had already done their work. All that remained was the formal signing and the final tangible proof of my reclamation. The final hearing was scheduled 4 weeks later. The settlement agreement was signed, notarized, and filed with the court. The hearing was a formality, a judicial stamp on a concluded negotiation. But as Eleanor reminded me, in front of the judge, it is not a formality, it is a final accounting. The story ends there. Make sure it ends correctly. I wore a navy blue suit, simple, professional, devoid of any attempt to look like a victim. Eleanor met me outside the courtroom. "Remember, you may be asked to affirm the terms are understood and voluntary. Answer clearly. Otherwise, I will handle everything." We entered the courtroom. It was smaller than I had imagined, with pale wood and fluorescent lights. It felt sterile, like a doctor's office for legal ailments. Marcus and his attorney were already seated at the opposite table. He wore a suit as well, but it seemed to hang on him. He stared straight ahead. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with a brisk, no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed the file in front of her. "This is the matter of Johnson versus Johnson. Counsel, please state your appearances." Eleanor stood. Eleanor Daniels for the petitioner, Ava Johnson. David Miller stood. David Miller for the respondent, Marcus Johnson. The judge nodded. "I have reviewed the settlement agreement and the petition. Ms. Daniels, does your client affirm the terms are understood and acceptable?" Eleanor turned to me. "Ms. Johnson." I stood. "Yes, Your Honor, I understand and accept the terms." "Please be seated." She turned her attention to Marcus. "Mr. Johnson, do you affirm the terms are understood and acceptable?" He stood, his voice low. "I do. Please be seated." She made a note. "The agreement appears to allocate assets beyond a standard equitable distribution. Ms. Daniels, is there a reason the court should approve this deviation?" This was the moment. Eleanor stood again, smooth and composed. "There is, Your Honor. May I approach to submit a supplemental exhibit?" "You may." Eleanor walked to the clerk's desk and handed her a single sheet in a plastic sleeve. The clerk passed it to the judge. It was the screenshot of the dating profile. The judge put on her reading glasses. She looked at the paper, her expression neutral. She read for a full minute. The only sound was the hum of the ventilation system. She looked up, her gaze shifting to Marcus. "Mr. Johnson, this exhibit appears to be a profile from a dating application. It lists your relationship status as widowed. Is this accurate?" Marcus's attorney stood quickly. "Your Honor, the parties have reached a settlement. The specifics of the underlying marital discord are not necessary for the court's approval of the agreement." The judge's eyes remained on Marcus. "I asked the respondent a question. Is this an accurate representation of a profile you created?" Marcus's voice was barely audible. "It is." "Speak up, please." "Yes, Your Honor, it is." The judge looked back at the paper, then at me, then at Marcus. Her mouth tightened almost imperceptibly. "I see. And the petitioner, Ava Johnson, is the individual referenced as the deceased spouse?" "Yes, Your Honor," Eleanor said. "She is very much alive, as you can see." The judge set the paper down. She removed her glasses. "Mr. Miller, the deviation in the asset split is now clear to the court. Fraudulent misrepresentation of this nature, constituting intentional infliction of emotional distress, is a valid factor for the court to consider in evaluating the fairness of an agreement. Do you have any objection to the court approving the agreement as submitted?" Miller looked defeated. "No, Your Honor." "Very well." She addressed both tables. "The settlement agreement is fair and reasonable under the extraordinary circumstances. The court finds the dissolution of marriage is warranted. The agreement is incorporated into the final decree." She signed a document with a quick flourish. The marriage of Ava Johnson and Marcus Johnson is hereby dissolved. The decree is effective immediately. You are each free to remarry after today. Good luck to you both." The gavel struck. A sharp, final crack of sound. It was over. We stood as the judge exited. I felt a strange lightness, an absence of the pressure that had been building for months. Eleanor placed a hand briefly on my arm. "It's done. The decree will be mailed to you. You are free." Across the room, Marcus was whispering furiously to his attorney, who was shaking his head, gathering his papers. Marcus finally looked at me. There was no anger left, only a hollowed-out resignation. He had been judged, not just by me, but by the law. The official record now contained his lie and his concession. I walked out of the courtroom, Eleanor by my side. In the hallway, she handed me a copy of the signed order. "A clean break. The house sale closes next Friday. The funds will be dispersed per the agreement. You have your life back." "Thank you," I said. The words felt inadequate for the service she had rendered. "You did the work," she said. "I just channeled it. Go live, Ava. Very much alive." She walked toward the elevators. I stood for a moment in the courthouse corridor, the legal paper in my hand. People moved around me, lawyers, clients, clerks, the mundane machinery of justice. I had passed through it. I had used its levers and gears to extract myself from a fiction and reclaim my factual existence. I walked out of the building into the midday sun. I did not look back at the doors. The hearing was the climax, the final authoritative blow. The legal revenge was complete, sanctioned by the state. The story he had written had been officially rejected. The paper it was written on stamped void by a court of law. I took a deep breath of the free air, the first breath of my new, legally verified life. The house sale closed without incident. His buyout check was deposited, and my portion was wired to a new account in my name only. I signed the final papers at the title company's office, alone. The keys were handed over to the new owners, a young couple. I did not drive by to see it again. It was a transaction, completed. I moved into the apartment the following week, a 2-bedroom in a modern building closer to the city center. The second bedroom was for my office. The walls were a clean, neutral white. The windows faced east. I hired movers for the furniture I had chosen to keep. The rest had been sold or donated. What arrived were my books, my vinyl collection, my desk, a comfortable sofa, the art prints that were truly mine. The space echoed at first, full of cardboard boxes and the smell of new paint. I unpacked methodically over several days. Books organized alphabetically on the shelves, records categorized by genre, kitchen utensils placed in drawers. Each item settled into its new position, defining the space as mine. There were no arguments about placement, no compromises on style. The silence was my own to fill. A month after the move, on a Tuesday morning, I was sitting at my new desk finishing a client project. The morning sun fell across my keyboard in a warm rectangle. My phone buzzed with a text. It was Simone. "Coffee? The usual place? 11? I looked at the time. 10:15. I typed back, "Yes. See you there." I saved my work, shut down the computer. I put on a light jacket and collected my keys and wallet from the bowl by the door. A new bowl, ceramic, bought from a market stall. I took the elevator down to the garage and drove to the cafe we had frequented for years. Simone was already at our preferred table by the window. She stood and hugged me, a brief, tight squeeze. We sat. She studied my face. "You look good. Rested." "I am rested," I said. It was true. The constant low-grade tension that had lived in my muscles for months was gone. "Any news?" she asked, though she meant news of him. His company transferred him to a non-client role, a lateral move. I heard through a mutual contact. I did not specify the contact. It was irrelevant. She nodded. "Serves him right. And you? How's the new place?" "It's quiet. It's mine. I'm finishing the Patterson rebrand this week." "That's a big account. Congratulations." We ordered coffee. We talked about her work, about a movie she had seen, about my mother's planned visit. The conversation was normal, effortless. I was not a subject of drama. I was a person having coffee with a friend. After an hour, she had to return to the office. We parted on the sidewalk with another quick hug. "Dinner next week?" she asked. "I'll text you," I said. I drove back to my apartment. The afternoon was clear. I stopped at the grocery store in my building's lobby and bought a few things: fruit, bread, a small bunch of yellow tulips. Back upstairs, I put the groceries away. I filled a glass vase with water and arranged the tulips. I placed them on the windowsill in the living room, where the sun would catch them. I stood there for a moment, looking out. The view was of other buildings, a slice of sky, the movement of people and cars far below. It was not a suburban panorama of lawns. It was a view of life, anonymous and ongoing. I turned back to the room. A box of books still sat by the shelf, half unpacked. I knelt and opened it. It contained volumes from my university years, old design theory texts, a few novels. I lifted them out one by one, dusting off the covers, slotting them into gaps on the shelves. At the bottom of the box was a small, flat package wrapped in brown paper. I did not remember packing it. I unwrapped it. Inside was a framed photograph. It was a picture of me, taken by Simone on a hiking trip years ago, before I was married. I was looking over my shoulder, laughing, the wind in my hair. I had forgotten this picture existed. I held the frame. The woman in the photo was unfamiliar in her unguarded joy, but she was also a part of the factual record. She existed. She had not been erased. I placed the photograph on the shelf beside a stack of art books. It looked right there. A piece of my history, reclaimed and displayed on my own terms. The sun moved across the floor. I made a cup of tea and sat on the sofa. The quiet in the apartment was not empty. It was full of my own breath, my own choices. The revenge was complete, but its true value was not in his punishment. It was in this silence. It was in the tulips on the sill, the books on the shelf, the photograph of a laughing woman. It was in the simple, unquestioned fact of my presence. My phone buzzed again on the coffee table. A client email, a reminder for a call tomorrow. The mechanics of my life, my independent life, were turning. I picked up the phone, read the email, typed a brief confirmation. I placed the phone back down. I finished my tea. I looked around the room at the evidence of my existence, curated by my own hand. There was no rage left, no cold calculation. There was only a profound, solid peace. The story was over. The next one, whatever it would be, was mine to write. Very much alive.